But I'd like to tell you that our speaker today has a world vision. He is from Oklahoma City, and he loves Oklahoma City. He loves Oklahoma. He loves the USA. But his vision is bigger than that. His vision is for the world. And he has a dream. His dream is to help people to make a mark in the world today. He's traveled all over the world with his organization called Water For, and he has seen sources of water that have caused millions of people to die on a daily basis. He's about helping to make a mark in the world. That's a particular interest to me as my son is in Kenya. He's a family practice physician. He has a little hospital that he's built the last year, and he's drilled 8 wells. They have not hit water yet. So I'm excited about hearing some more about Water For. Our speaker today is also a man that has a heart for leaders, to help us also to make a mark in the world, and to leave a legacy of life, and to help us to get on the right run of life to make that difference. So if you would please welcome with me, please welcome Mr. Ray Sanders.
All right, so who's holding out on the DoubleTree cookies? Has anybody got a DoubleTree cookie yet? I mean, come on now. I drove all the way from Oklahoma City. I could smell them all the way up here. I come into the lobby and I don't smell anything. And I'm lactose intolerant, and what are you serving? Cheesecake. So what's up with that? So somebody better find me a DoubleTree cookie before this day's over, by golly, let me tell you. Now, I had a great time in Oklahoma City yesterday. I mean, we packed the house. There were a lot of leaders. I didn't know there were that many ethical leaders in Oklahoma City. Now, I wasn't surprised when I got to Tulsa and I saw the room filled, that's for sure. But I want to let you know that I was aglow yesterday. I'm a little bit jet lagged, and I want to tell you why. I'm aglow and I'm a little bit jet lagged because my friends, I just celebrated my 25th wedding anniversary. I just got back from Florence. Yeah, thank you very much. I just got back from the hills of Tuscany. It was absolutely beautiful, but probably the funnest thing about it is that I had the opportunity to surprise my wife. Okay, guys, you're going to hate me after today. I had the opportunity to surprise my wife by renewing our wedding vows in a little chapel just outside of Vineyard in the Tuscan Hills. All right, and here she is with me today, my wife, Stephanie Sanders. Please stand, Stephanie. So there's a couple of things I want to point out about Stephanie. I have her stand up. I want everybody to know who she is because I know that some of you guys are single. You mentioned your fiancés. I just want you to know this one happens to be taken. Stephanie has been my girlfriend for 28 years, my bride for 25. We share 6 children together. And get this, would you believe this? This woman is a grandmother. Give it up. Can you believe it? We have 3 grandchildren and we have a 4th on the way. Also joining me today is somebody very special that's come in all the way from Texas. He's a college athlete. He happens to be my son, Joshua Sanders. He's negotiating with Kentucky right now by playing ball for them. This is Joshua Sanders. And so I'm really just happy to be here and to be in Tulsa. My brother lives in Owasso. I have a lot of friends here in Tulsa. I spend a lot of time with folks with the National Prayer Breakfast. We travel up to D.C. every year, and there's a good group of guys and ladies from Tulsa that I go there with every year. I really am excited to be with you because this topic is one of my most favorite, and it really represents a lot of what I do around the world. I deal with a lot of leaders, and I take a lot of leaders from Oklahoma and other states with me into the developing world, helping them look for ways that they can have an impact and use their influence and who they are to make a difference in the world. So I know when I have an opportunity to be in a room like this, I'm surrounded by leaders. There's no doubt about it. When I looked through the sheet today and I looked at the companies that you're with and I saw the positions that you hold, it became very clear to me today that I'm surrounded by a group of leaders. But you know, if we're going to be honest as leaders, there's something that we will admit as leaders, and that is that we didn't get where we are just on our own. If we're honest about who we are and how we got to where we are today, we're going to acknowledge that there are people in our lives that help us get to where we are. And if you think about it, those people represent what we're going to talk about in the leader ladder today. Each and every one of us have climbed the ladder of success. We're at a certain position on the ladder of success. And there are people in our lives that have helped us get to where we are. And in the leader ladder, we call those people who help us get to where we are the rungs in our life. But there are also people in our lives that are wrongs. And what we're going to learn and unpack today is how rungs and wrongs help us get to where we are. Now, one of the interesting things about traveling, as much as I do, is that when I travel around the world, I have this crazy thing about ladders. If you can't tell, I've got something going on with ladders. And a lot of times I'll come into a meeting like this, and the people that are sponsoring it will go to the head maitre d' or somebody and say, hey, we got to get these, what's going on? We changing light bulbs here? I got a speaker coming in. I say, oh, no. Those are my ladders. I'm actually going to use them for visual aids. But as I travel around the world, there's something I've noticed about ladders. Now you'll notice that these ladders are different in and of themselves. We have over here a little 2-foot ladder that's made out of metal. We have a wooden ladder that's about 5-6 feet. And then we have about a 10 to 12-foot ladder that's made out of fiberglass. And then we even have a little bamboo ladder. A bamboo ladder that I found very interesting. This bamboo ladder reminds me of a ladder that I had when I was in Uganda. Bob Goff wrote a book called Love Does, and he asked me to come to speak at the inaugural launching of his leadership academy in Gulu. And when I called and emailed and talked to John Niemeyer about coming, I said, I need a visual aid. I can't bring these ladders all the way from Oklahoma to Uganda. Would you have a ladder there for me and fabricate that ladder or have it available for me when I get there? And so I show up there, and they have a ladder made out of something similar to this, out of bamboo. It just happened to be that it was about, half the diameter. It didn't have 2 legs. It actually had 3 legs, and it was very skinny, but I thought, okay, they must use those here. And so as I began to climb this ladder, this bamboo ladder, and I've been to enough places. I've been to China, I've been to India, I've been to a lot of places. And if you've ever driven down the road in those countries, you'll look up on sides of buildings and you will see people, human beings, not monkeys, human beings climbing scaffolding made out of bamboo. It's crazy how strong bamboo is. Now, I'm not going to climb this ladder today, but I made the assumption that I would climb that ladder that day because they were taking care of me. Well, little did I know, as I climbed up the ladder, what was going on. I told John, I said, John, this ladder is for me to use as a visual aid. Well, he picked up on the word visual aid. I began to climb the ladder, and the crowd, it was a bunch of young people, the crowd, I thought, I'm pretty impressive. They think the white guy can climb the ladder. And so I went up another step, and I went up another step, and I got to the top of the ladder, and there was no more. All their eyes were like just waiting to see what was going to happen. And I found out that the thing was just held together by little strips of string and little strips of nails. And I climbed this bamboo ladder all the way to the top. And I make that point because we all are climbing ladders that we think are very stable. We put a lot of time, we put a lot of energy into these ladders, and we kind of protect where we are on our ladder. And like that day, I very innocently was climbing up that ladder on the way to the top. And if I'm in a room full of leaders, I know that you're climbing a ladder. You see, each and every one of us came into this room today carrying a ladder. If you saw the promotional piece, you saw me holding up this particular ladder. Now, your ladder may look different. You've walked in today and you may have a duffel bag ladder. You may be an athlete. You might be somebody who's really into sports, and that's your leadership ladder. You're climbing the ladder of success maybe with athletics. Or maybe you're carrying a briefcase. A lot of us in this room maybe carry a briefcase, or maybe it's a backpack, or maybe it's a duffel bag. But the point of the matter is, everybody that's in this room today is carrying a leader ladder. And in fact, in case you don't think you are, I provided you a gift on your table. Everybody will leave today with a little ladder of their own. And if you'll notice on your place setting, I had these made just for you, and these will be a reminder to you of those points that are made today. So if you don't think ladders are important to us, think about this. Over here, we have the little 2-foot ladder, right? We talked about this ladder. And this ladder represents where we all started. Now you're thinking, well, I started at a hospital. Well, that's not exactly what I'm talking about, but I am talking about being a baby. And if you go back to your childhood, or if any of you have kids, or any of your grandparents like Steffi and I, one of the things that you will observe is that we are obsessed with the ladder from the very beginning. You're like saying, what do you mean, babies, ladders? Think about it. All we're trying to get our kids to do from the very beginning is what? Lift up, climb, get up off the ground. Start from the bottom, work your way up. And what do? We encourage them. like parents, we're crazy. We sit in there, we watch, they go to bed, and we wait for that moment in the crib, right? And these days, trust me, I've gotten all the texts, I've got the instant messages, I've got the Snapchats. I get she rolled over, First step on the ladder. Then what's next? Oh, they begin to crawl. Oh, they begin to pull up. And oh, they begin to walk. And we program ourselves from a very, very early age to begin lifting up and to climb these leader ladders. So there's the baby ladder, right? So what else do? We fast forward a little bit. The next thing you know, you got to go to high school. You start off in kindergarten. You go to junior high, middle school as they call it today. Then you go to high school. And the next thing you know, you're climbing the ladder at college, or maybe in a college and career type of a background. And you're climbing this ladder. What do you have to do? You got to study hard. You got to make the grades. You got to get the scholarship. You got to burn all the midnight oil. You got to do it just right, because what do you have to do? You have to climb the academic ladder. You have to get the A's. You got to get the grades. You got to do what you got to do. And we're still pushing and prodding our kids. I have 6 children. Trust me, I know. And then what happens? We make that big day, and I'm hoping that it happens with Josh soon, and that is graduation from college. And we've spent all this time since they were babies in the crib, and all that time through junior high, and all that time through college, and now what are they about to do? They're about to launch out on the big boy ladder, the career ladder. And we begin to climb up this ladder. We take the first step. We get the first job. We get our first territory. We start out as assistant manager. We get the manager's position. And the next thing we know, we're over a department, we're over a region. And then we make it all the way up to this step right here. And there's that last step on the ladder. Oh, that coveted spot. The CEO, the president, the big kahuna, the guy, the gal at the top of the leader ladder. All our life, we've been thinking, oh, baby ladder, college ladder, the career ladder. I have made it to the top. But what have we failed to notice? If you were to come up and take a closer look at each and every one of these ladders, I kid you not, on the right side, every one of these ladders, you know what you will find? A warning. Right here. What's it say? What's it say? It says, danger. Don't go here. Oh, but what are we going to do? We're going to come right up here. And I'm not going to do it today. But we get right up here and we like the way it looks. We're like, I made it. Yeah, baby. I'm on top of my ladder. How y'all feeling about that? I'm the boss. And he's beginning to look back down. You start thinking about, how'd I get here? What's so great about being up here? Hey, anybody out there? Remember me? I'm up here at the top. It's kind of lonely up here. You ever heard that phrase? It's lonely at the top. And you see, in all of my travels all around the world, I spend a lot of time with top leaders, not just from our country, but countries all around the world. And you're not faking me out. You might be faking out a lot of people, but when I get alone with you, and I get alone with guys like you and ladies like you, and we get some time out in the bush, or we get some time in China, or we get some time in South America, and we hang out in the airport, and we're kind of cross-eyed, and you start letting down the barriers, and you get away from all your stakeholders, you start telling me just how much this spot is lonely, it's isolated, you don't know who to trust, and you honestly begin to ask yourself, was it all worth it? Now, I'm not down on success. I'm not down on climbing the leader ladder. I'm not down on making a lot of money. I'm not down on making it big. But what I am saying is, it's lonely at the top, and we need to acknowledge it, and we need to think about what is it that draws us to this spot. And is this a bad spot to be? Is this the wrong place to be? There's nothing wrong with being here. But what is wrong about being here is that if all I focused on is my success, and I have no significance. You see, because if I've climbed all the way up this ladder, and I haven't invested in other people, and all I can do when I look down my ladder is all I can see are people that I've stepped on and climbed over all the way up. Have you ever heard the phrase, be careful how you climb up because you're going to pass the same people going back down? Eventually what you begin realizing is it does matter how you've climbed this ladder. And what are these steps called? I've given you a hint earlier. What are these steps on the ladder called? They're called rungs. And I want to, for today's purposes, I want us to think about the rungs on our leader ladder are the people that have what? That have helped us climb up to the top. But our ladder is also full of other things. And those are the people that we have wronged and people who have wronged us. It works both ways. There are people we have wronged, and there are people that we have righted. And the people that have helped us climb the ladder are the rungs, and the people that have held us back or we have stepped on are the people that we have wronged. And every leader ladder is full of rungs and wrongs. So the question is, how will you use your leader ladder? Everyone in this room has a leader ladder. Will you use your ladder for success alone? Or will you use your ladder for success and significance? And that's what I want to unpack. You see, if I were to ask you today, what is a ladder for? What is a ladder for? What will you tell me? A ladder is to climb, right? A ladder is to climb. It's pretty obvious. But is it quite so obvious in the life of a leader who understands success and significance? I told you that I recently returned from Florence. And when I was in Florence, I had the opportunity to see the original David that was sculpted by Michelangelo. Now, if you think about it, and the gentleman that was here previously asked about what defined great leaders. Great leaders, I will tell you, are not leaders that are interested in climbing the ladder. They are the leaders that will climb down the ladder. They are the leaders that will serve others as they climb down the ladder. And so when you look at David, the life of David, the greatest king that ever lived, look him up, the most popular king that ever lived, Michelangelo has the opportunity to sculpt this leader, this world-renowned leader. And all the other sculptors at that time had sculpted him as the victorious leader, the one holding the head of Goliath. And that's who we want to be as leaders, right? We want to be Goliath. We want to be the biggest. We want to be the greatest. We want to be the biggest, the tallest, the baddest ladder. That's what we think. But what we don't think about is what we really want to be is we want to be a leader like David. Why? Because what did David do? David was the low little shepherd boy. David was the man that decided to serve his friends, his family, and his country. He stepped down from the positions that he was at, and he went to serve. The greatest leaders, I contend, the greatest leaders who ever lived were the leaders that served others. That was the word. I'm sorry, that was the word that was missing from the list this morning. The greatest leaders that ever lived, categorize them. A leader is certainly someone that people willingly follow. I will contend with you that people didn't willingly follow Hitler. They were intimidated to follow Hitler. But people like Gandhi, Jesus, David, the list goes on. Those are people. The common characteristic among those people, and the greatest of those I believe was Jesus, that's just my belief, my feeling, is he said he came to serve, not to be served. And I think we see a pretext to that in the life of David. So when we were celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary, and we walked in, and there was this magnificent, if you've seen it, you just can't quit looking at it. It's an amazing piece of artwork. And I didn't know these things about it that I'm about to share. But they said that this particular piece of marble was flawed. It was a flawed piece of marble. And in fact, somebody else had attempted to try to do some things with it, and it wasn't working out. And they asked Michelangelo, would he be interested in doing a David? And he chose that particular piece of marble. It was an imperfect piece of marble. You know what? I thought, how perfect that David, the greatest king, the most popular king that ever lived, was chiseled out of what? An imperfect piece of marble. Come on, that's awesome. Think about you and me. We're not perfect leaders. We've got rungs in our lives. We've got wrongs in our lives. You messed up. You're not the best leader that ever lived. And nor was David. But he was remembered as he was because he served others. He served his country. He served his God. He served his friends. He served his family. And as Michelangelo began to chisel out on this piece of marble, he chiseled and he chiseled. And he got to one particular spot on this piece of marble, and if you're ever there with the tour guides, they'll tell you about this, that there's this cavern, this cavern in the chest of the sculpture. And they actually describe it as kind of a hole in David's chest. And the tour guides, they'll tell you, well, Michelangelo, seeing that opportunity, he said, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to emphasize his masculinity. I'm going to give him that cut in his chest, make him look like he's bad mother, big bad David. And a lot of people don't realize it, but this particular version of David is David prior to the battle. And the reason he's so buffed out, looks like me when I look in the mirror, he's all flexed out. And the way he looks so strong, and he looks so, Stephanie could tell you, it's true. The reason he looks so awesome is that he's focused. He's focused, and he's facing his giant. And it's just prior to the battle. And he's all tensed up, and he's ready to go. His chest is pumped out like all of us want to be. And that's what the tour guides tell you. And he said that Michelangelo was emphasizing his masculinity and his strength, and it's like popping his chest out. Then Goliath and said, bring it on, buddy, bring it on. You know what I think? I think they missed it all. I think they missed every bit of it. I'm not an art major, and I can't tell a cartoon from a Michelangelo. Let me tell you what I think. I think that Michelangelo realized that in the heart of every leader, there's this void. There's a void. There's a hole and a desire for significance in our life. And some would say it's a God-shaped void that only God can fill. And others would say that it's just a need to help out your fellow man. For me, I think it's all those things. And I think he sculpted David with that deep crevice in his heart, not to make him look tough and buff and to look like he was getting ready to conquer the world, but to remind every one of us as we began to look at that sculpture and we began to look at the life of David and we began to explore who he was, and we'd see that hole in his heart, we go, he's just like me. He's an imperfect piece of marble. He doesn't have it all together. He messed up big time. He had to say he was sorry a lot. He made a lot of mistakes. But at the end of the day, he's the hero. And he realized who he was, and he had a hole in his heart, just like you and me. So, that's what the rungs and the wrongs are about. It's beginning to recognize the people in our lives that have either lifted us up or held us down. You see, we need to identify who those people are. We need to identify who are the rungs. Who are the people in our lives that have helped lift us up? We didn't get to where we are without them. And you know what? Let's be honest about it. There's a lot of people that wronged us. And I dare say that those people, if we look at it in the right way, have helped us get to where we are today just as much as the rungs in our lives. And we can turn those bad things into good things. Romans 8:28 say, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to His purpose. I really believe that. I really believe that you can take a negative and turn it into a positive. So whether your ladder is full of rungs or wrongs, what you do with your ladder and how you use your ladder to influence others will determine the type of leader that you are. Because I'm convinced that the greatest leaders that ever lived didn't climb to the top of the ladder and stay there. No, when they got there, they said, you know what? I got this down. I think I'm going to climb down, I'm going to hold the ladder, and I'm going to say, come on, let's go conquer the world. Let's go do it together. Let's use the influence that we have to make a difference. Now let me tell you a few stories. I want to tell you a few stories. Back in 1945-ish, here in Oklahoma, there was a young man. He was about 13, 14 years old. And he grew up in a three-room shack, literally a shack. And his mom and dad told him, he said, well, look, we're leaving. We're moving on. We know you love to play basketball. We know you're doing good in school. And we're moving. And you can stay or you can go. And much to my surprise, they let him stay. And this young man lived in this three-room shack on his own, growing up, going through high school and everything else on his own, by himself. He would go to bed at night. He would lay down in his bed, thinking that his parents had more or less abandoned him, looked up at night, and he could count the stars. I mean, there was literally a hole in the ceiling and in the roof. And if it began to rain, guess what? He better move or he was going to have an early shower that morning. And if he didn't have air conditioning, he'd just have to throw on more blankets, because he didn't have AC, he didn't have a fan, he didn't have a ceiling fan. But what he did do is that every morning at 4 o'clock, without an alarm clock, 4 o'clock, wake up on his own, and he would roll papers and begin to go and start his day. I believe that he was driven by one of your principles, and that principle being that he had a strong ethic. And ethics has been defined as a moral principle that governs a person's behavior. You see, strong ethics carry us. And it's not where you start, but it's where you finish. And the key is to finishing strong. This boy's name was Kirk. And Kirk would throw his papers and then go to his next job. He was up at 4 in the morning. He would go to his next job. He was on his own. And he would go in, he would open up the particular business, and every morning for breakfast, every morning, what he had for breakfast, my kind of breakfast, wasn't Wheaties, it was a Baby Ruth. He'd eat a Baby Ruth for breakfast every day. He would get the store up and running. He would run off to school. He would do good in school. He would play basketball, was on the starting team. He became the valedictorian of the school. He would go to basketball practice, leave basketball practice, go back to the store, work at the store, and leave the store every night. On his way home, he would knock on the back door of a cafe, and they knew who it'd be. It was Kirk. And there was Kirk. They'd hand him a bowl of chili and some crackers, and he would go home, and he would start it all over again. Now you may think, what's the big deal about that story? Well, let me tell you what the big deal about that story is. Well, it's not impressive enough that you can get a teenage boy out of bed at 4 in the morning. I don't know what to tell you. That's pretty impressive without an alarm clock or a shotgun or something. I mean, come on. That's pretty impressive. You had a loan, right? But the most impressive thing about this is not only his work ethic, his driving principle, but the thing of it is that Kirk had a rung in his life. You see, his parents may have abandoned him. They may have left him. But what happened? There was a pharmacist who had a pharmacy in Atoka, Oklahoma. He was a businessman in the area. And what I didn't tell you is that the reason that Kirk had to go to the back door and had to get his chili and his crackers there was because Kirk was a black boy. He was an African American. And he grew up in a time called segregation. But what was really amazing is that this pharmacist was white. And if you were black in those days and you worked at the pharmacy and you pulled a soda fountain drink, that was pretty controversial because the white folk in town didn't think that was too cool. Well, you know what? Skeet Carney didn't care. He saw the potential in this young man named Kirk. And he said, you know what? You pull all the sodas you want. You can help me. You can open up the store. You know what else he did? He would. I just think it's so hilarious. He would send Kirk off to the bank with all his money. And the people in town are like, what are you doing? Do you know what you're doing? You're sending a black kid with your money. He could run off. He says, you don't know the Kirk that I know. You don't know the work ethic that I know. Because I believe in this boy. And Kirk began to realize that this man believed in him. He went through high school. He graduated. He was valedictorian. Played basketball. And he went back to working at the drugstore. And Skeet said, hey, Kirk, this town can't hold you. You have too much potential. It's time for you to go to college. College? I'm just a poor little black boy. No, you need to go to college. You've got the potential. Put 2 checks in his pocket, said, get out of here, go to town. Long story short, he ends up going to college, goes to ROTC, graduates from college, gets his master, and becomes Dr. Henry Kirkland. And a friend of mine, Dr. Wade McCoy, wrote a book about Dr. Kirkland. It's called A Rainbow in the Dark. And it's his life story about how he grew up in Atoka, Oklahoma, and how Skeet Carney was a rung in his life. Now here's the amazing thing about Kirk. Kirk went on to be a professor in college, and it's estimated, he won an award last year from Oklahoma State University, it's estimated that he's touched over 1,000 medical doctors and nurses and encouraged them to go into school. My close friend, very good friend, Dr. McCoy, wrote this book, became a medical doctor because of Dr. Kirkland. Dr. Kirkland influenced Wade to become a medical doctor at a time when he said, I don't have the smarts to do this, and Kirk said, yes, you do. You have what it takes. But I say to you that Wade's life wouldn't have been impacted if it hadn't been for Skeet Carney impacting Kirkland. And now Kirkland and Wade McCoy are touching lives all around the world. Well, it just happens to be my distinct pleasure today to introduce to you my very close friend, Dr. Henry Kirkland. He deserves it, I promise you. All right, you got to quit, or he's going to come up here and talk, and I got to. And probably worse than him talking is me having to listen to him gloat all the way back to Oklahoma City. But let me tell you what, this man has become. Guess what he's become in my life? He's become a rung. He's become a rung in my life. Isn't that a beautiful story? And when you think about your life and the leader that you want to become and what do you want to become and what you could do with your life, is it going to be the number of zeros that are behind the dollar sign, or is there going to be the lives that you've touched along the way? And that's the life that Dr. Kirkland has lived. But you know what he would talk about? If you come up to him after this and you want to tell him how great he is and how awesome, guess who he's going to talk about? Skeet Carney, the pharmacist, who saw the potential in a little bitty black boy in Atoka, Oklahoma, during segregation. That's, my friends, what it means to be a leader who understands what your ladder is all about. That is success and significance. Now, let me tell you another story, and I have friends who are going to help me out with this part. And this time, we're not going to go to a live surprise. We're actually going to go to video. And I want to share with you another friend of mine who went with me on a journey. When I first met Ross Hill, he didn't have a passport. And I said, Ross, what are you doing with your life? He says, I'm just in banking and I'm just living it out. And I said, man, you have so much potential to make a difference in the world from where you are. He says, how so? I got him a copy of Rick Warren's book, The Purpose-Driven Life. He's now gone on and written his own book called Broken Pieces. He ended up traveling the world with me. He's traveled the world more with me than any other leader that I've taken with me on trips. And I want you to see what happened in the life of this leader. It wasn't just a transformation in his life. It literally transformed his entire organization. This is a story about how the golden rule, learning how to treat others as you want to be treated, has made a difference. And at Bank 2 in Oklahoma City, they call it building better lives. This is the difference one leader can make. It would be easy to think that his motivation is to make a lot of money and then give a portion of it away. And he would tell you, if you sat down and had lunch with him or talked to any of his people, if that's all you got out of what he's shared, you've missed the point entirely. You see, Ross is one of those leaders that is in business and is out in the marketplace that understands what I call the triple bottom line. The triple bottom line. He told you, they've made money. We know how to make money in America. He's made the profit. And let me tell you something. Don't misunderstand me. Money is a good thing. Money can make a huge difference around the world. It just depends on what you do with it, right? And how you utilize it as a tool. Money can do a lot of great things. So anybody here that's got a lot of money, hey, I'm not putting you down. I want you to realize what can you do with what you've got. You can have a whole lot of impact with money. But that's not what they're about at Bank 2. It's not just about money. They're also, so if you look at it this way, they're not just about profit. It's what they do with their margin. They use their margin for the marginalized. They use their profits for a purpose, which is the other part of the triple bottom line. He uses his profits, and his bank is focused on purpose. He would tell you the greatest impact of what they're doing at Bank 2 is not so much the money and how successful they've been. It's been in the very lives of their employees. They come to work with a whole different outlook on what they're doing, which is the third thing on the triple bottom line is the people. John Maxwell would tell you it's the law of the lid. And if people will rise, your organization will rise to the level of your leadership. And what Ross is doing, because of the type of bank that he's putting together, because he's focused on profits, he's focused on purpose, guess what he attracts? He attracts the best people. And that affects all his profits and affects the way the customers perceive what they're doing. So it's a triple bottom line mentality. And so not only is he getting success, he's not up here hoarding it. He's not up here bragging about it. He's using his success as a platform for significance. And I don't know what that means for you. And that might be here in Tulsa. It might be around the world. We're talking about a lot of different ways. It might be that you're standing at the water cooler at work and somebody's having a bad week, and you are just sensitive enough as a leader to put your arm around them and say, hey, how's it going? Or maybe it's a smile. One of the funnest things that I do when I travel internationally is I'll stand up in front of a group like this, and I'll start my speech and I'll just do this. And they do just exactly what you did. They smile back. Isn't it amazing the power of a smile? That's the power of personal influence. And don't forget, as a leader, you've worked hard. I'm not putting you down. Congratulations. You got up and pulled up in the crib and you're walking. You made it out of college. You made it to the top of the career ladder, or you're on your way up. But how do you use that influence that you've been given? Don't forget. Remember the rungs. Remember the wrongs. Now, another story I want to tell you. I had an opportunity to be in Shenzhen, China. In Shenzhen, China, they have a stock exchange. And I had an opportunity to meet the founding members of that stock exchange. And they came to one of our values leadership forums, much like this, and they heard me speak. And I had former mayors of Oklahoma City and some other leaders that you'd recognize from our state with me. And they would do breakout sessions around tables talking about how our lives are driven by our values, who we are, and our ethics. And the Chinese were very drawn to that. Well, this particular set of Chinese, these founding members of this Shenzhen Stock Exchange, they had been getting closer and closer to me over a series of about 2 or 3 days. And they're very private, and it all comes through relationship. And they asked me, how can we get some alone time with you? And I thought, well, let's have breakfast early one morning. So we decided that we'd have breakfast early one morning. And they set me down, and they said to me, Mr. Ray, that's what they call me, Mr. Ray, what would you do, or how would you advise a group of friends who are in business together and no longer want to take bribes? I said a group of friends who work together and they no longer want to take bribes. I didn't say, are you talking about you? But I knew who they were talking about. And here were founding members of the Shenzhen Stock Exchange, and they were convicted about how they were running their business. Now, you know, I'm not stupid enough to think that there aren't people in this room right now who are probably taking bribes. There's probably somebody who's shown up here today who's probably taking a kickback. There's probably somebody in here that's fudging an expense report. But these folks began thinking about, what kind of leader do I want to be? How do I want to sleep at night when I go home? And so they asked me, what do I do? Because in China, bribes are very common. It's a common way of doing business. And if we don't take bribes, we're going to be cut out. We're going to be cut off. And, you know, what would you have said to them? Oh, well, just quit taking bribes and, you know, your family starved to death, you can panhandle. But that's basically what it amounts to. Are you not under the same pressure? Same pressure that they're under? So the only thing that I can think of is a story came to mind, and you all know the story. It was a story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And another guy, the great leader, named Daniel. And there was a time in the crisis in their faith that they had to decide what they stood for. And I shared that story with those members of that stock exchange, and I said, the only thing I can tell you is that integrity is what's going to win the day. And integrity is a quality of being honest. And it's who you are when no one's looking. And so you have to make the tough decision. You have to decide, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Daniel, are you going to be the one to take a stand? Because let me ask you a question. If you don't, who will? In your company, if you don't stand for integrity and you don't stand for ethics, who will? You see, changing a nation, changing the world, having an influence on the world starts with you and me. And I said, the only thing I can tell you is that I don't know what the cost for integrity will be for you. But what I do know is that unless someone like you begins to take a stand and quits taking bribes, it will never change. And I kid you not, there were 3 women and 1 man, and there were tears coming down their eyes because they knew the cost and the price they would have to pay for the integrity that they hope to live by. For some of you today, that applies to you. It's time to stop. It's a time to turn it around. It's a time to be the leader you know you need to be and quit taking the bribes. Live a life of integrity and be the person that you say you are that's on your name badge. Now, I want to close today with a personal story. Can you hang in there for one more personal story? A lot of people who get to know me and they're around me a little more begin to realize that I grew up in a working class family. And believe it or not, my mom was pregnant with me when she was 15. That's not too uncommon here in Oklahoma. But my mom was pregnant with me when she was 15, and at 16, she had me. And here I was, this little curly-headed boy, and she was young. She was in 9th grade, and she was kicked out of school because she wasn't allowed to be in school having a child in those days. She and my dad ended up getting married. My dad abused alcohol, which resulted in a lot of domestic abuse. He beat my mother quite frequently. And I grew up in a family where it was not uncommon for my dad to come home at night from working. He was a blue-collar worker. He would come home at night. If he didn't like what was on the table, he may have had a few beers, and he would just take the back of his hand and clear off the table. And my mom was a great cook. I still love her cooking today. And he'd just clear the table, and that's the environment that I grew up in. And there would be nights that he would go into such a fit and to such a rage that the whole house would be turned upside down. And we would literally fear for our lives. And my mom would be black and blue and whatever. And there would be nights that we would run from our house to the neighbor's house. And our neighbors' names were Mr. and Mrs. Brown. Mr. and Mrs. Brown. And I don't care if it was raining and thunder and lightning or what was going on. If we knocked on Mr. Brown and Mrs. Brown's door, don't ask me why, but they would always let us in. We would be shaking. We were so afraid. And they would let us in, and all I remember is the funniest thing is funny things you remember, these images you get in your head. Mrs. Brown always had those funny little cotton gowns. And Mr. Brown had one leg, and he would wear a prosthetic during the day, and as a kid, that was cool enough. As he would walk around, it was like, mate, And then at night, when I'd go over to his house, Mrs. Brown would come to the door, and then here would come Mr. Brown, like a soldier, pulling himself on his elbows, pulling himself down the hall. He would grunt. And he'd pull down, and he would come and check on us, and he would lay with his legs around the hallway so we couldn't see. And as a kid, I just wanted to go, can I get a piggyback ride? But Mr. Brown began to invest in me. Mr. Brown worked for FAA, but he loved rocks, and he gave me my own rock collection. And I kid you not, up until about 6 months ago, it finally dawned on me, every kid needs a Mr. Brown. Every kid needs a Mr. Brown. Whose Mr. Brown are you? Mr. Brown was giving me a rock collection so he could build a relationship and invest in this kid that when I go back to my neighborhood that I grew up in, and my brother who lives in Owasso, we go back into our neighborhood, they say, we can't believe you'd amount to anything. I'm serious. They said, we are shocked that you guys have become anything. We thought you'd be a drunken, strung out on dope, in jail. We never thought you would amount to anything. And I've been blessed because people have invested in me. The rungs in my life. I had a 6th grade math teacher after my mom and dad got a divorce, Mr. Hatcher. You guys, are you starting to pick up on the theme here? Mr. Brown, Mr. Hatcher. Who's the Mr. Hatcher? Who's the Mr. Brown in your life? Those rungs, they're starting to come out, right? I had my wrong. You know who he was. And so Mr. Hatcher told my mom, didn't tell me, he told my mom, he said, that kid's going to be a leader someday. I think he knew what he was doing. He told my mom, because she would feel a matter of self-esteem, and my self-esteem was so low. If he told me, I think, that's Mr. Hatcher, he's my teacher. But if he knew that he was bragging, if I knew that he was bragging on me to my mom, that he was for real. And I felt a whole lot differently when I was around Mr. Hatcher, because Mr. Hatcher believed I could be something someday. Fast forward into high school. I don't know about you, but I'm a B-teamer. I know it may surprise you. I got all these boys that are athletes and daughters that are in ballet and do all this stuff. They got all that from their mom. They get all their athletics from their mom. They get all their good looks from me. Well, let's get, they get their good looks from me. Now don't laugh. Well, what's so funny about that? They all have their hair. They got their good looks from me because it's real obvious. Their mom still has her and I've lost mine, right? But the point is that I wasn't a very good athlete. I was a B teamer. I was the top of the B team, bottom of the A team. And if you've ever been a B teamer, you know what that's like. you're into the game. It's kind of like we're ahead by 30 points. There's 45 seconds left in the game. You're the only one left on with your warm-up suit. And what do you do? Every B teamer in here knows. You don't start leaning up and say, put me in, coach. No, you start leaning way back. You're like, it's okay, coach. It's okay. The cheerleaders, they're tired. Everybody's tired. Let's just go home. Well, I was in one game in El Reno, Oklahoma, 45 seconds left, leaning back in my chair, and there's this coach, Coach Wilson. Sanders! I'm like, oh, please, tell me you want something to drink. Sanders! Get in here, you're going in. Sends me in. 45 seconds. This ball I've kept. Coach Wilson. It's the reason I keep this ball. It's old, it's tattered. The guy inbounds the ball. I have the ball. It's like the whole world's watching. And what do? It's like slow motion to this day. It's painful to talk about. It's like boom, boom. I'm thinking I might get 2 points the first time ever. Boom. And I kid you not, I get to half court. This is no lie. I get to half court and I punt the ball. Thanks a lot. That's exactly what the crowd did. Everybody laughs. The whole team. Ah! We're ahead by 45. I'm totally like, I'm a loser, man. I'm totally loser. Buzzer. I'm so shook up. I run down into the basement of the locker room. A pipe. I hit my head on a pipe. This is for real. The whole team's laughing at me. But here's the thing about Mr. Wilson. I'm going to put him right back up here. A few weeks later, we're locking up at the gym. The metal bars on the door. It's just me and Coach Wilson. I kind of hang out with him. My mom and dad are divorced. He's kind of a male figure in my life. It's just he and I. We've turned out the gym lights. I can still hear the switch. We go to the door. I can still see the metal bars. It's dark. I hear the chains going around the bars. Locks it. Coach Wilson turns to me, puts his arm around me. Sanders? Yeah, Coach. You and I both know you'll never play on the A team. And he said, and if we're honest, you're probably lucky to be on the B team. But he said this, and it stuck with me for over 35 years. He said, you keep your work ethic, and you're going to be somebody someday. I never forgot about Coach Wilson. What do you think that meant in the life of a little single-parent kid whose dad was beating up on his mom, drinking beer, and running to Mr. Brown? Coach Wilson was a rung in my life. And you see, you and I have that potential to be that in someone else's life. Now let me fast forward to you. Fast forward 35 years. 35 years later, I hadn't seen my dad in 35 years. One night, a week before Martin Luther King Day this year, I'm in bed. I'm not a spiritualist. I'm not a mystic. I'm in bed, and either I wake up from a dream, or it was too much pizza, or not enough ice cream. I don't know what it was. But at the end of my bed, I see what is an archangel. I'm not kidding. And it's huge, big wings, and it's got its wings like this, and it starts to ascend. Oh, that's kind of crazy. Maybe I'm messing up, or what's going on with me? And as I look up the angel, I see the face of my father, my dad, the guy that had tried to kill my brother and I. He tried to kill me 2 times, chased me around my backyard in a car, shot at me in a ditch. I held him at gunpoint one time, and the cops show up. I'm holding him at gunpoint because he's trying to kill my family. And who do you think they think the bad guy is? They all draw up on me and like, he's the bad guy, not me. Well, you got the gun. I can talk about it that way now, but can you imagine growing up like that? I feared this guy. He was my Charles Manson, my own father. You think he was a rung in my life? I don't think so. But here's this archangel ascending, and I see this man's face, and it's my dad. The next morning, I'm at Water 4. The next morning, I get an email in my inbox, and it says, Dear Ray, it's a distant relative. Dear Ray, the hospice chaplain has called, and your dad would like to see you. You've got to be kidding me. The night before, I see this thing in my room. Next morning, I go in, I get this email, and they're wanting me to go see my Charles Manson. What do you do with that? I called the chaplain. I said to the chaplain, look, is this for real? You realize what this guy's done in my life? Yes, it is. He's dying. He's got 20% lung capacity in one lung. He would like to see you. So I call a friend. I take him with me. I go and I meet my dad. He lived 35 miles away from me, and it took me 35 years to be reunited. I had forgiven him a long time ago. He was a major wrong in my life. I'm telling you, he could have counted for half my ladder's wrongs. He had screwed up so much in my life. I feared him with all my life. But I, like David, decided I was going to face my greatest fear. I wanted to go see this man that I had demonized and who in some ways was in my life. And you may not have that opportunity, and it may not be safe for you to do, but that day, because of the courage that the chaplain gave me and a friend, I went and faced my dad. It's been an amazing reunion. He's had a change of life, a change of heart, and he's met my children. And the first time he met him, he was so excited about it, it put him in the hospital because he couldn't catch his breath. And I spent some time with my dad and asking him, I said, Dad, what do you do? He's a lonely guy. He's the guy that's at the top that didn't have any, lonely, at the top of his ladder, lonely. I said, what do you do for entertainment? What do you do? You know what he told me? You know what my dad told me he did? Reads the dictionary. Come on. How lonely is that? Read the dictionary. He handed me the dictionary. I'm flipping through a 2,000 plus page dictionary. I'm not kidding. I stop. And the word on the page that he had previously circled on the page was the word reconcile. Wow. How crazy is that? And in the dictionary, he had a diary in his dictionary. Keep in mind that this is the guy that I had demonized and who I had feared all my life. This is a diary note that he had made in that dictionary. It said the best things parents can pass on to their children is sharing love to others, plus caring, sharing, and forgiving. Forgiving. Here's the guy that I had feared all my life, now teaching me how to forgive. I don't know who the wrongs are in your life, but you need to find a way to forgive them, because bitterness is that pill that you swallow that you think is going to kill somebody else, but it kills you. And you may not be able to reconcile, but you can forgive. It takes two to reconcile, but one person can forgive. And I want to encourage you, if there's a wrong in your life at that level, I want you to forgive them. I want you to move on. And if possible, try to reconcile. But also don't miss that the fact that there are rungs in your life that we tend not to reconcile with either. There are people, you're Mr. Hatchers, you're Mr. Browns, there's other people in your life that you need to pick up the phone. Give them a call. Stop by and say, hey, thanks for being that person in my life. A buddy of mine went with me that day, and he shared this story. He wrote me this note. He said, most Mondays you get around and start your day, head to your job, work a while, maybe meet a friend for lunch, go back to work, finish your day, and head home. Not this Monday, not me. This Monday, I saw a miracle. I got to witness a prodigal father longingly embrace the son that he has been estranged to for over 35 years. I got to see reconciliation and redemption lived out before my very eyes. I saw a broken man in the final lap of his life have the best day of the rest of his life. I watched a son open his arms with courage to give his father the greatest gift he could possibly give, forgiveness, unconditional love, and honor. I watched a man and a son put the past behind them with eyes filled with tears, each express their love to one another. Even though there was a trail of pain and rage in the past, today there was gentleness and healing. Today I watched a new beginning at a point in a man's life when everything seemed to be ending. The question is, how will you end your life? How will you be remembered? I had the potential to remember my dad in a certain way. He was a major, major wrong. There was a lot of pain. But one of the things I did with my dad when I went to be with him is I wanted to have some kind of connection. 35 years. I wanted to have some kind of connection with him. I asked my mom, I said, tell me one good memory that I could have about my dad. I had no good memories. But I did remember he had given me a pocket watch when I was 12 years old. And I thought, I'm going to take that pocket watch with me. And if things go okay, because I didn't know if they would. If things go okay, I want to offer this pocket watch to my dad and see if he remembers it. And when I extended the pocket watch, he said, oh, I remember that pocket watch. I gave it to you when I was 12 years old. And I looked down, and I had not noticed this before, but the pocket watch was stopped at 2. Now, that may not mean anything to you, but what it meant to me is I was given a second chance. And I said to my dad, Dad, I don't care about the past. It's water under the bridge. I think that this pocket watch symbolizes a second chance, a second time, a reunion, a new beginning. And it doesn't matter what's happened, what we have is the future. So today, as I look around this room, it doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter how messed up your marble has been. It doesn't matter how far up the leader ladder you've gone. What matters is where are you going to start today? What step are you going to grab hold of? Will you be remembered for the rungs in your life? or you'll be remembered for the wrongs. You see, each and every one of you hold and have in your possession a leader ladder. It's a gift. What will you do with it? Thank you very much.
One more story, please. One more story. And for DoubleTree cookie?
A DoubleTree cookie. Hey, is Shannon not awesome? Come on. It's just, honestly, how many people would call Shannon a rung in their life? Am I right? Every one of you in this room, this is a lady who is a rung in your life. You wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the vision she had for this organization. Thank you for that opportunity.
We have a surprise.
Oh.
Peach cobbler.
Okay.
Could you tell the peach cobbler story, please?
Okay. Well, Dr. Kirkland, he would tell you that he has a sweet tooth. And I think this is the story you're talking about. But Dr. Kirkland has a sweet tooth, and he loves peach cobbler, and he was given peach cobbler one time, and a woman came up to tell him how great he was one time, and she was crying, and she cried in his peach cobbler, and so she ruined his peach cobbler. He didn't get to eat his peach cobbler. Well, Shannon found out about it, and she said, you know what, we're going to redeem that, and somebody, I don't know who it is here, Jessica has provided Dr. Kirkland some peach cobbler that hadn't been cried in. So, Dr. Kirkland, hey, it's been a great day. Thank you, guys. Go out there and be the leaders you know you can be. Hang on to your leader ladder. Make a difference. Thanks a lot.